sharing now as well. Okay. So in marketing, there is potentially, we could go for, there's so many potential people that we could go for. And if we're to do that, it's called like a scattergun approach. We're just going for anyone that wants anything, and it's not an efficient use of our time or energy. So we need to be really careful on like how we use our resource as effectively as possible. So I think of it like a chocolate orange. So where you've got a chocolate orange and you tap it on or sort of hit it against the wall, which you might not do, and it breaks into all these segments. And the idea is that the whole world is a chocolate. It's really stupid, isn't it? I wish I wasn't recording it. Right, the whole world is a chocolate orange, obviously. And when we smash it, there's only going to be a few segments that we're really interested in going for. And then if we do that, we can put a lot of effort into going for those. We can really understand them. We can talk their language. And I think, like the likes of sort of Aston Martin as a brand, quite literally, there'll only be a very small proportion of the population that would have the means and the interest to buy it anyway. So, but for something like the casual dining group, we've got a much bigger potential population that we can go for. So these segments, these sort of our chocolate orange, we need to work out what they look like. So we need to sort of, as much as we can, to profile them and to build a sort of a picture of who they are. And then we can decide, so if we decide how we can group people together, we can then decide which ones are our priority. Now, when we do that, we can then design the marketing mix to be really attractive for that group. So this is part of the strategy part of SOSTAC, or the strategy part of MOST, or it's APIC's the other one, isn't it? Analysis, Planning, Implementation, Control. It's like the planning section in APIC, if you were going to use that as a model. So why do you think, because they do spend a lot of time in working out these profiles of the customers they're going for, why? Well, I suppose I have already explained it, but can you sort of build on, say, why would the casual dining group be really keen to segment their audiences? Why would they be keen to group them together and to work out who they're going for? What advantage does it give them?
You can tailor the dining experience for the sort of people that are going to be in the restaurant, because some people might not go because of COVID.
Absolutely, we can really make it work for them, can't we? So that's actually the product, the dining experience itself. And then if we get that right, because we understand what they're after, we understand their behaviour, it's going to be it can blow them away, can't it, by understanding that. So it's not generic, and that's what I like about it, that it can be quite tailored. Are there any brands that you can think of that do this well, that really seem to know their customers? Are there any brands that you like that you feel sort of get you?
Maybe like John Lewis, because that's like really tailored for like the higher end.
Okay.
More like luxury experience. Well, not luxury, but it's
the high
like
end
a
of
middle
that.
ground. Yeah. It's not like poor quality type things, but it's not like super high.
Do you know what their strapline is? Because it used to, they had this strapline. So when I was at uni, like obviously when the world was black and white, because it was that long ago. So like, yeah, over 20 years ago. And I don't know if they've still got it, but John Lewis's like tagline was never knowingly undersold. And I don't understand what that meant, but basically it was about positioning themselves as different. And that's what they try and do, isn't it? It's sort of, and I've actually got, when I'm looking at brand personality, I describe like the John Lewis almost as a middle class woman, someone with a bit of sophistication. I think you're absolutely right. If we really understand our customers and what they're expecting of us, we can charge differently, can't we? We can differentiate ourselves, we can stand out in the marketplace, and we can deliver. And it does allow them that slightly, because I agree with you, I think they are sort of on the mass market, but they're towards the premium end, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So we've got some ideas there as to why we'd group people together. Really, just so we get them. And actually, more and more now, I mean, one of the big trends in marketing is customization. And maybe when you're looking at it's sort of and co-creation, so working with our customers to create something really different and really special that is meaningful to them. So just I found a hand icon that looks really bad, actually, doesn't it? It looks like it's got a broken thumb or something. But I just wanted to put where segmentation, targeting and positioning, so STP, what we're looking at now, where it fits in the marketing framework. So back to that slide. And as I said, it's under strategy. So it's under strategy for most, under strategy for SOSTAC, because it's about what direction are we going in to achieve our objectives. So we know what we're about, our mission or our situation analysis. We know what we're planning to do. And the next thing is who's going to help us get there? Who are the right audiences? So that's why I thought it was useful to recap that. So market segmentation, as I mentioned, is about grouping people together based on their similarities. And we do that so we can sort of work out, well, how are we going to reach them? What are they going to want? How are we going to price for them? So we can sort of understand what's going to work for them. So have a look at these different ways in which we can segment our customers, and just have a think for the casual dining group, which of those do you think are going to be most relevant to the casual dining group?
I'd say all of them definitely relate to the casual dining group, but I think probably one in particular might be behavioural. So they might want like a sort of for continual like return to the restaurants to have some kind of loyalty scheme or something.
Yeah, right. This is good. So, well, yes, absolutely. So let's go through them and tailor them to because yeah, I think you're right. I think they've all got a relevance. So geographic, how is that going to work for specific to the casual dining group? Let's have a think about the format of the business. Does anyone know how many restaurants they've got at the moment? Any ideas? What I'm thinking on the geographic side is that people are going to travel to the restaurants, but they're not necessarily going to travel like hugely far. So I think if I were looking at geographic as a way of targeting, maybe you'd look at customers within, you've got 10 miles of the M25 there, but 10 miles of the restaurants. So people that might be prepared to drive in, or if it's a city, you know, they're on certain lines to do. But I think we sort of need to focus, if we're doing it as a general promotion building, then it's going to be like much broader in the UK. But actually, if we're looking at people who then can engage in the restaurants, we're going to be looking at people within a geographic proximity. And there's going to be people missed out there because you're going to have potentially some travelling trade when people are able to travel more. But actually, if we're going to focus in terms of building regular customers, then we probably want to have people that it's easy for them to access, or, you know, whether that's on the way, that might be even people who work geographically close. So it might be for the lunchtime trade that you're looking at local like local businesses and things, that people come in and have business meals there, or sort of straight after work that they come in, and then it might be sort of more you attract people at the weekend that come into town, if that's where you're based, a different sort of trade. So we've got geographic, I think could be very, very relevant because of it's a physical consumption, isn't it, where you need to be on site. Well, Do you think it does need to be on site for the restaurants? What are you thinking when you're thinking? Are you thinking sort of almost all delivery as well, or what's, because the brief was about getting people back into the restaurant, isn't it?
Yeah, but dining in again, wasn't it?
Yeah, so let's do it dining in which case geographic has got to be a key. Okay, so on geographic, we've got the physical proximity to the restaurant. So we've got the accessibility in terms of public transport. So things we've also got is ACORN classification, and that's about profiles of people who live in certain areas. So you might have certain areas where people have they're not necessarily the highest income areas, but people are more prepared to eat out, because you might find in the richer areas that people actually quite prefer to dine at home, but actually there might be a sort of mid-band where people have got a bit of disposable income and actually part of their social life involves eating out. So the ACORN classification, there's something also called Mosaic, if you ever heard of Experian for your credit ratings, and they build these profiles up of people who are like, they give them sort of different classifications according to what street they live in, but it sort of gives you a behavioural profile. So the geographic, I'll just check, the geographic sometimes can mix with the behavioural as well, and that's a sort of ACORN or Mosaic. So demographic, right, so we've got our three sub-brands, haven't we, in the casual dining group or big table. How do you think they're going to differ for each of the restaurants?
Definitely like
said that.
No, that's great. Just who'd like to go first?
After one of you guys.
what I was going to say.
Okay.
No,
I'm so sorry. I'm just so pleased people are talking. Go on. Is it Tamsin?
Go on, Krishna.
Krishna, go on, Krishna.
Okay, so I was going to say like age, definitely, because so I think we've mentioned previously, like, so like Cafe Rouge we kind of considered as like an older people restaurant, but whereas like Las Iguanas and like Bella Italia, we said like probably more like middle-aged, younger people, like working class type thing. And then
yeah.
Cool. You guys can carry on, say your next point.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, Krishna. We obviously said that Cafe Rouge is more targeting to sort of older people. And yeah, obviously with Las Iguanas and but what was the other one that's gone out of my head?
Is it Bella Italia?
Bella Italia, that's it. Yeah, that's more of a kind of one that appeals to more younger people.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Now, within that, if you think about, so your product is your product's around your restaurant opening hours, isn't it? Because we're doing face-to-face. And so what I'm thinking is you're potentially going to have different customers at different times of day. So I'm thinking if they are open for a morning slot, which they might do because they might do a breakfast menu, that could be quite a different, there might be almost like a different breakfast menu prior to 9 o'clock, which might be a sort of pre-work breakfast, to one which is almost like a leisurely shopping day out. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that could be quite different. Then you're moving on to lunch. So lunch in the week is going to be quite different potentially to lunch at the weekend. Not on about menus, I'm on about like who we'd expect to see. And then I think because what we want to do with a restaurant is we want to maximise, we've got a fixed asset in the sense of like we're paying for the restaurant, the rent or whatever anyway, so we want to maximise what money we can make from it at each time. So I'm wondering as well, on the demographic side, it might even be more complex in the sense of actually then what we'd try and do is appeal, like I think Bella Italia do, is almost appeal to an audience from sort of 5 till 6:30 that are families, and then from 6:30 onwards it's the sort of date night, you know, friends, whatever, more of a sort of high-end social thing where then they're more likely to buy alcohol. And then the weekends evening is a very different, you know, even more sort of potential. You'd expect a higher average spend and you'd expect a longer people to be in the restaurants for longer. Do you understand sort of where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So I don't even think it's as simple as one brand attracting. I think even within it, there's levels of complexity, isn't there? Potentially to maximise, because I can see like people almost like it's almost a day off type in the morning. People go out for breakfast because they've booked, you know, it's a day's leave, or they're retired. And actually, I think that could be quite a good market, especially a Cafe Rouge. I think we've sort of written off to sort of older populations there. Do you think? So we spoke before about sort of the role of gender in the UK is sort of something where it's becoming less acceptable to almost market to gender, whereas it used to be quite a big deal to almost market to the female as the decision maker in a family unit. But I think we are seeing that start to shift now, in the sense of it shouldn't be about, that's not a suitable form of segmentation, particularly as the younger people, you know, the Generation X get older. That's going to sort of almost die out a bit. Do you think occupation plays any role in segmenting for these sort of restaurants?
I think so.
Give some examples then.
So, like, say for like these locations were based in like London,
yeah,
you would like London pre-COVID would have been like people going out for lunch all the time. So like you're more like those like business people are likely to go and eat like at one of those restaurants. But then whereas,
yeah,
no, sorry.
I was just thinking of that actually. That's a really good point. The reason why I think there's a lot of relevance to that. One of the things, if you're targeting a lunchtime trade, you need fast service, don't you? You need like almost like a promise, because actually if you've only got a lunch hour, sometimes it might be for like almost like a meeting, a lunch meeting, where you sort of almost want to take your time and it's a chance to catch up. But sometimes you almost need a fixed price. Do you know what I mean? Like a limited range menu that you can serve within a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And also that ties. Sorry. No, go on. It's like there's an echo, isn't it? Please go on. It's much better if you do so than I do. Okay. What I was going to say, this ties into geographic. In London, there was a it was an echo. That was why. So when I've been in the city of London and it's been at the weekend, everything's closed. Like the restaurants are closed, the supermarkets closed. It's like dead. So I think that does tie in with the geographic as well as the demographic. So, Krishma, I agree. I think occupation, but that is a lot to do with geography, isn't it? And the placement of the restaurant. Like, so you're not going to get, the CEOs aren't going to go to Belarus, are they? I don't think they are. I think they go somewhere a lot posher. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. Yeah, it's my suspicion. Okay. Anything more about occupation? And socioeconomic is about the money that they earn as well. Okay. So behavioural. Are any of you sort of regulars at restaurants where you have some sort of incentive to eat there?
Nando's.
So what happens? I'm not. Is there a loyalty card or what's the system there to encourage you to eat?
Yeah, there is a loyalty card, so you get like, they're called chilies. So I think if you spend over, I think it's like 12 or 13 pounds or something, basically a meal, then you get like a chili. And I think I can't remember how many there are. I think there might be nine or 10 or something like that. And if you, the more chilies you get, you're eligible for free stuff. So you can you can end up ultimately getting a whole meal for free.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah.
And has that still worked during lockdown have they done a lot of deliveries, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they're still doing takeaway and things like that. So yeah, you can still use your Nando's card then. So yeah.
And is there anything that's excluded at all? So like Saturday night's excluded, or is it just constant?
No, yeah, you can still use it whenever.
Okay. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
have to spend a certain amount, I think, to actually get a
Yeah.
chili. But yeah.
Have you worked out how much it will actually cost you to get a free meal?
As in how many because how many
How many
chilies?
chilies? Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm just trying to check because I'm a bit sad actually. I've got the Nando's app, but it's for some
It's
reason.
not sad. That just shows why it works, doesn't it?
It's-
Because what I'm getting at is I think people see things like that and they go for it because it's almost like a bit of a challenge as well, and it's really nice. But I remember Tesco's did it with us, and I think it was something like our 250th online shop. You get a bottle of wine. And I worked out based on an average spend of how much we spent, like the bottle of wine had cost us like thousands upon thousands. You know, when you're like, oh God, that actually isn't good. It just shows how much we're spending with them. Because actually, I bet you have to spend a fair bit to get something, but you know, it's again, it's an incentive, isn't it? And do you know what it is? It's a reason why you choose Nando's rather than somewhere else, and that's what they want you to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you working it out? Have you got your app? Are you almost close to getting something then?
Well, for some reason it's logged me out, and I need to go get my Nando's card to log back in, and I can't be asked to go get it right now.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So have a think on the behavioural one. Have a think about, because actually what you want to do, we want to encourage loyalty, but some things are seen as a bit like gimmicky. Do you know what it means? It's about actually for a mass market, something like that works. And actually for the 3 brands we're talking about, something like that would work. For a really high-end restaurant, I don't think, you know, that you wouldn't want to have like I've got with my, you know, McDonald's where you got your coffee beans. You'd never get that. But what you might do is they might have some exclusive something where they have a tasting evening or something really special. Do you know what I mean? If you've got over a spend, everything is about, right. The reason why segmentation works well is it's all about appropriateness, if that makes sense. And then the last one, so I think behavioural we could really do something with. The final one, psychographic, this is about our personality. This is about us as individuals. So for personality, you've got 5 different personality dimensions. It's something called the Big 5, where it goes from sort of conscientious to neurotic. Openness is one of them. There's these sort of different things that were all on a sliding scale, and it's fairly consistent over time, this sliding scale. And actually, you could segment people. So extroversion versus introversion is one of them as well. So you can start to build a sort of almost like if you've got somebody who's quite a social animal and they like sort of going out with friends, that might be on the extroversion. So you're sort of, in terms of personality, you're going for people that are potentially open. So they're open to trying different menus or different, and actually quite extroverted. So it can help in terms of understanding what's going to appeal for them. Lifestyle, this could be even things to do with what our food choices are. So if we want to go for a sort of a more natural or raw diet, if we're looking at more vegan options, I know, I don't know if it's Bella Italia, I can't, I don't think it's Bella Italia, I think it's the Pizza Express. They sort of do this pizza where they cut the middle out and they just put a load of like rocket in it, and then it makes it like a 500 calorie pizza. So that sort of caters for people that like want to have the social experience but are able to eat, watch their weight. Pizza Express definitely really do a reasonable vegan menu as well. So I've got, you know, if you've got specialist dietary requirements, because that can form, and some of that can come from lifestyle actually. And then we've got sort of different attitudes towards, that could be towards eating out, towards different brands. And then class is potentially not just how much people are earning, but how open or closed-minded people are. And there's a number of factors around sort of what makes us who we are. And that's more, as I say, more on a sort of personal level. So if we build all these together, we can start to get quite a good profile as what our customers could look like. Class, I mentioned, like, so these are some examples where we've got different levels of, you know, there's so many sort of, there's upper class, middle class and lower class. It used to be all about jobs and roles and about almost like your place in society. So this is these examples we see here. And then associated with that, we've got different purchase consumptions that we'd have. So actually you potentially, if you have a look through here, which which of these class names do you think would appeal most, say, for Bella Italia? If we're looking at...
Are you still sharing your
Oh,
PowerPoint?
is it gone? I'm so sorry. I thought I was. Evidently not, so you can't, thank you. Here we go, should be back on. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so have a look at these. Think about Bella Italia. What do you reckon?
I think anything lower, middle, and like anything that's lower, middle, and beneath that. So lower, middle, upper, lower, and lower, lower.
I agree. I think the upper, we're not, you know, they're not going to be, it's not conspicuous enough, is it? It's not upmarket enough. They're not going to, it's not flashy enough, is it?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. I was thinking lower middle was my like natural spot with this, and then I was thinking Pizza Hut, I reckon, is upper lower, if that makes sense, where it's quite a family experience. From my experience of going there recently, and just, but I mean, all of this is based on assumptions, isn't it? And that there is a danger with it, but also if we don't make some assumptions, we've not got anything to go at. And then another form of doing it is to look at what life stages people are at. And here, you know, we're looking at like who's got the money as well. So you can imagine for Lasiganus, the bachelor, the newlyweds, they're likely to sort of appreciate it because they've got the money and they can go out and they've got the freedom. Full nest one possibly go out for like birthdays because they've got like quite a lot of responsibility. Full nest 2 might go out a bit more often and might have the sort of 5 till 6:30 slot or lunchtime. And then we might have, let's have a look. I think for Cafe Rouge, we're probably looking towards empty nests, aren't we? Where we're probably empty nest 1 potentially, or full nest 2 with sort of almost like date nights. So I think this sort of gives you an idea of like how you can build up a bit of a profile. I'd like you to be quite, I'd like to go out on a bit of a limb on this and sort of really build the profiles of the people that you think we should be attracting for the different brands, because I think doing that really means you can create a really interesting marketing mix. If you just tell me what segmentation is, I know what it is, you know, that's not giving us anything new. I want you to sort of work out where they need to be positioned in the market and who they need to be looking at for, and I think that's not just as a whole, I think that's for the 3 brands. Acorn plus classification I mentioned in terms of demographics, and this is based on where do people actually live. And actually say, I think quite often if you're going for better off council estates, you will find people are eating out too because they've got reasonable jobs, they've got potentially some disposable income. So yeah, you've got, and then B's, you know, modern family housing, higher incomes, they're possibly eating out more regularly actually. They could be the sort of weekly going out. So we can start to sort of pick a mix really who you see. And you could almost, there's something called where they do sort of what they're called, like the profiles, they're called, oh, I've forgotten, there's a special word for it, it will come back to me, where you sort of build but basically like they're personas. So you build them of sort of, and a company like the makeup brand Avon, they build like 6 or 7 different personas for their customers, and they have one that's like a 40-year-old fitness fanatic who does this, that and the other, and that's one type of client. Then they build another one who's maybe a stay-at-home mum who does this, that and the other. Then they have another one that's a high flyer, and they do a real mix. And you could look at sort of almost, it does feel quite stereotyping, which I think is the disadvantage of it. And also another disadvantage is if you're so focused on a particular audience, you may be missing the potential for new potential audiences. So just in terms of the critical analysis and what are the disadvantages for these, there are some, but I think the advantages of like working out who you're going for far outweigh the disadvantages of risking losing people. So if you've got some these sort of, I think this is the sort of key one. Have you got some ideas as to what you could talk about here, or how you could explore this a little bit more for the 3 different brands? You're confident that you can, because we're not saying there's a right or wrong answer for this. All I'm saying is just explore it. Would you feel confident giving it a go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's good. You can have some fun with it. I know it sounds daft, but not that assignments could ever be fun, but you could really be a little bit creative with this. And as long as you've got a rationale as to why you're doing something, it could be really, really sort of bring your creativity to life. So once we've got this idea of who we're going for, we've then got to we've got to think about what strategy we're using. So are we going to go for one approach for everyone? So are we doing, and the benefit of this is we get a lot of advertising done. Coca-Cola have started to do this. They used to have Diet Coke for sort of really was for females. They'd have and they'd have the advertising with a sort of a male that was tended to be stripping off and doing something like mowing the lawn, and then these women all drinking Diet Coke and sort of lusting after him, and that was like one target audience. And then they'd have normal Coca-Cola would be seen as more sharing, sort of more potentially more male actually, but they've changed it. They've got a very much more happiness sharing, and actually they've put on their billboard advertising all of their bottles with a big thing around it with Coca-Cola, but they're different colours. And the reason they've done that is they've tried to reduce their advertising spend. So they're consolidating the brand, raising brand awareness, but Coca-Cola, the brand, is the hero rather than the product. So we can, in your case, look at just advertising. Could even go to the level where you're actually doing promotions for all 3 brands, but you're doing them geographically. Or what's the risk of doing that if we're doing a mass marketing sort of campaign in our approach?
Can be too generic.
Yeah, it can. Why do companies do it then?
Saves money.
And actually, I don't imagine, given the financial position and the fact we know they're struggling, I think there is a case of just wanting to get out there and wanting to do something. But they're quite different brands, and there's potentially some quite different audiences here. So there is a danger. Do you know what you do? You get volume for mass marketing, but you don't necessarily get a connection. So
and then compare why you could do one with like the cost effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
The other one, it'd be good to target different markets and then compare them. Doesn't that make a critical analysis?
I think that would be very good for critical analysis, absolutely. And one thing you might do an undifferentiated one if you've got a couple of the restaurant chains together in a location. Does that make sense? So actually you might sort of go for one approach, because what you can do with marketing, you do test marketing, and then you could go for a different approach, which is a differentiated one where you're almost going for a different market, and compare and see what the results are. Yeah, I think that could work quite well, because otherwise, the whole thing, and this is what people say when I'm working with them on their marketing, is just, if you knew what worked, you'd just do it, wouldn't you? But the whole thing with marketing is it's almost like you've got to spend money and time to just see what results you're getting. Okay, so differentiated, this is where we are looking at potentially one geographic market, but we might go for different flyering for lunchtime menus, which I think would work really well. So you've got a fixed priced, fixed menu. You know, you might even say, 30 minutes you can be, no, within 5 minutes the food is brought to your table, especially if you're encouraging people to or faster than that if they're ordering by through apps and just coming to their table and they've got everything sorted. So you could differentiate for different markets, but in the same geography. And then you could even have, if you've got certain geographical areas which have got a high level of young families, you might have your children's menu or the sort of family deals. And then you've got certain areas that's more sort of flats and young bachelors and sort of the newly coupled or newly married. Then you sort of almost do the date promotions. So that's where you do differentiated. So you've got the geographical market, but different versions. And then a niche market would be something where we're going to really quite out there in terms of a very specific offering. So we might go, if we decide that we're almost going to become vegan in what we're doing, then actually we are what we might do there is we get a bigger geographical draw because people would travel to it, but we've got a smaller potential. So we've got less people, but we might expand the geography if we went that way. So there's like shops like High and Mighty used to be one for particularly tall, bigger gentlemen, and so there was very much a niche market. And there's other ones for sort of particular sort of almost things where people are passionate, like sort of running shops or things like that. I don't see. Do you think there's any restaurants that do a niche marketing strategy? Because I can't see how that could work. Can you? I think unless you went for a particular dietary requirement, I just think niche. Occasionally, I've read about a restaurant where you eat in the dark, which just sounds a bit odd. But the idea, or basically, you got blindfolds, so you sort of have you really taste the food. And there's other restaurants that are like underground restaurants where you have. Well, there's ones where people have them in their own house and you can sort of buy tickets, used to do, but obviously this is pre-COVID. And that was quite an interesting concept, this sort of underground dining type experience. But I think for our restaurants, it's got to be undifferentiated or differentiated, hasn't it? Yeah, I do. Right, when you are doing your assignments, even if you've got a lot of words, don't bother telling me what all three are. Just focus on the ones you're looking at and explain how they're useful. So you don't have to go straight into the application rather than description, because at this stage, we're just going to make sure we get the most of the mark. So if you're not looking at niche marketing, unless there's something relevant to say about it, just leave it out. Okay, so don't feel by not explaining everything, you're actually being more confident telling me what really matters. So if we're going for a slightly different position here, what we need to do, we need to work out how we're going to stand out in a marketplace and how we're going to be seen as different, and sort of work out what we need to stand for as well. So we need to try and identify how we can sort of have a point of difference in terms of a competitive advantage. Can you think, with the three restaurants we've got and what you know of them, are there any competitive advantages that they've got? Do they do anything differently or particularly well?
They've always been around, haven't they, for a long time? I don't know whether they could use like their familiarity, isn't it? Like, I don't think I've ever walked down a high street like locally to where I am that doesn't have a Bella Italia or a Cafe Rouge. So I don't know whether they could use that.
I think there's something to be said for that. And I think in a world of uncertainty, familiarity has a real value. And actually, when the economy is in a bad position and things like that, it's like sort of retro, nostalgic, almost like the retro sweets sell really well. So maybe that's something along that. It's a bit like Lloyd's use it, don't they? Lloyd's Banking Group. This idea that we've always been there for you. I think Tesco's are doing it a bit as well, don't you? They did it in a sort of 1970s campaign, didn't they? I think it was last year, where it was sort of almost because it was celebrating an anniversary. Yeah, that could be something. In a world of lots of fads and fashions, you know, that they're sort of, yeah, there's something quite comforting about them. So that could be something. Any other ideas? This might be something you choose, like have a think about what could they do differently. If you assess the market position in the situation analysis, we look at their competitors, be bold, you know, suggest that they do something different, suggest that they ace something in some way that just gives them that point of difference. I don't think we're entering a market now where just okay isn't good enough anymore. You know, we're trying to encourage people to go back out and eat. I think we've seen this week that people seem to be going out in abundance, don't they? So there's obviously like a huge latent demand, isn't there, for people to resume life as normal. However, you know, if we're trying to compete for their spend and they've got a sort of, you know, economic uncertainty, we need to make it good enough, don't we? We need to give them something, whether it's comfort, whether it's some sense of like making special memories in as we're connecting again, whatever it is, just have a think about what you can do differently and what you can suggest that they do differently, because you know, you can suggest anything on this. So what we want to consider is where the brands sit compared to the other competitors in the marketplace. And actually, when Tom spoke to us in our last session, some of those databases, you can look at the companies themselves, but you can also identify who their peers are and their peer analysis, and that could be quite useful based on sort of turnover and positioning. So we want to look at, you know, who would you say for if we go for Bella Italia, who are their competitions? Who are their competitors?
So like Pizza Express and Prezzo and like those types of places?
I think absolutely. I think they're a similar spend, aren't they? And they're a sort of similar, sort of slightly Italian-y type feeling, aren't they?
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. So what we want to do, we then want to work out, well, where do we sit relative to them? So actually, it might not be price and quality. So it might be other dimensions. It might be, and for dining experience instead of quality, it might be for range of menu. So just think about which dimensions matter, and then you could do this based on like TripAdvisor reviews or based on like their feedback that they're getting, or you could just do it based on, you know, you looking at their menus. But just bear in mind, again, critical analysis, a limitation of a positioning map is about the data that we've got in there, isn't it, and the quality of that data. Okay. Have you got any, I know it's all very sort of brief and in little chunks, but on this segmentation, so this idea of grouping together, I think the 4 categories I've given you are definitely the 4 most relevant and they'll work for you. We then work out based on that, you know, we're going to target people within a certain geography, we're going to look for these type of people, we start to build a profile. And then based on that, we're going to look at how we set our position out in the marketplace to appeal to them. On what I've spoken about so far this morning, do you have any questions? Okay. So what I suggest is then we're going to next go on to loyalty and how we're going to build customer value. If we could just have 15 minutes, just so I can sort of, yeah, if we could do that, I'll stop recording now and then we'll come back at past if that's okay, and then we'll carry on with loyalty. Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, see you in 15 minutes. Okay.